You first met Baz right here on Dutch the Podcast, talking about his incredible bike store, GoDutch.ca. Hi, Baz.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Good, man. Maybe you can answer a couple of questions for our audience, seeing as you are a participating sponsor of today's show. Thank you very much. But I want people to understand a little bit about what you do. What bikes do you sell?
Hey, I sell the real Dutch bikes, authentic Dutch bikes. And if for people that are looking for that real Dutch feel, I'd say come by my bike shop this summer and pick up your authentic new or used Dutch bike before we sell out. You can buy online or in store. Online would be www.godutch.ca.
Awesome commuter bikes. If you are looking for a long-lasting, quality-built bike right from the Netherlands, GoDutch.ca is the place to go. GoDutch.ca. Thanks, Baz.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi, friends, and welcome to Dutch the Podcast. My name is Mike Whitson. Right there is Tom Byfoot. He, after all, is the editor-in-chief. Hold on, I'll get the title right. The executive producer. He is like the head of Hollywood here at Dutch the Podcast and Dutch the Media. How's it going, Tom?
It's going very well. Thank you, Mike. Looking forward to another episode. And I love it the way you give me all these wonderful titles.
I actually wanted to call you the Grand Poobah today, but it didn't come out. So,
it came out well enough, I think.
Okay, well, good. You know, and every time I think of a new title for you, by the way, it does not come with a pay increase, unfortunately. I'll let you know. Listen, I want to remind everybody, if you are tuned in today and you've watched a couple of Dutch the Podcast, you might like to subscribe. On YouTube, please feel free to do that. Hit the notification button, and you'll be told every time a new show comes up. Also, you can subscribe on any platform you're listening to the podcast. And we do, of course, love your feedback.
Yeah, I'd love to get some feedback. And if I may mention our website here, DutchTheMedia.com is where you'll find a contact form to get in touch with us. And of course, you'll find our books and our magazines and all kinds of information on our website at DutchTheMedia.com.
By the way, also at DutchTheMedia.com, all of the publications that are handled there are wonderful sort of exploration of Dutch culture and history, art, and even food. I've seen recipe books and that sort of thing. One of the books that you'll find among that is a very good one written by a friend of mine named Tom, the Grand Poobah, as I mentioned, of Dutch the Media, Hidden in Plain Sight. And you'll find that for sale right there at DutchTheMedia.com.
I love it, Mike. Self-promotion, nothing beats it.
But you know what? You don't want to do it for yourself. Don't worry. When my donut line comes out, all you're ever going to talk about is donuts.
Oh, I'll talk about your donuts. Don't worry.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Hey, Mike, did you know, I'm going to jump in because I want to get to our guest because I'm really excited about the guest we have on today. Did you know that both Canada and the United States have an official Dutch Heritage Day?
I did not know that.
Well, in 1991, President George Bush at the time proclaimed November 16th as Dutch American Heritage Day, and that's celebrated with events in the United States extensively. And not to be outdone, I don't know why it took them 20 years, but on April 10th, 2019, the Canadian Parliament unanimously proclaimed May 5th as Dutch Heritage Day.
Excellent.
Now, that's wonderful, but we are based in the province of Ontario in Canada, and Ontario goes one better than the federal governments of the United States and Canada because Ontario has a Dutch Heritage Month, not just a day, a whole month.
Please tell me we're celebrating this month.
This month is the month of May, and we're celebrating it throughout the province. There are celebrations related to the bill, and it's a very short bill, and it was introduced into Parliament in 2011. And I'm just going to, if that's okay, do you think I have time to quickly read the actual bill?
And as we add another title, Speaker of the House, to Tom Byfoot's illustrious career, please read that to us.
Okay, here we go. An act to proclaim May as Dutch Heritage Month, and I've got it on my screen, so I'm reading it off of my screen. Assented to March 30, 2011. Preamble. Ontario is home to about 500,000 Dutch Canadians. Since the early 1800s, the Dutch Canadian community has made and continues to make significant contributions to the growth and prosperity of the province of Ontario. By proclaiming the month of May as Dutch Heritage Month, the province of Ontario recognizes the important contributions that Dutch Canadians have made to the economic, political, social, and cultural fabric of Ontario's society. May is historically a significant month for Dutch Canadian community. On May 5th, 1945, the Canadian forces were instrumental in the liberation of the Netherlands from occupation during World War II. The Netherlands celebrates its independence and liberty along with the heroic efforts of the Canadian forces with a national holiday known as Liberation Day, which takes place annually on May 5th. Therefore, Her Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Ontario, enacts as follows. The month of May in each year is proclaimed as Dutch Heritage Month. That's the bill. Short bill, not a lot of bureaucracy, and it underlines why the Dutch and the Canadians love each other so.
It's so true. I mean, really, it just that underline of, look, we went through hell together, and we're instrumental in saving each other,
and we still do a lot of trade together. So this bill, Mike, was introduced by Elizabeth Witmer. Elizabeth was an MPP for 22 years. MPP is a member of the provincial parliament for our outside of Ontario listeners. And she held a series of significant portfolios. She was deputy premier, caucus chair, opposition house leader. She also served in two provincial cabinets as Minister of Labour, Minister of Health, Minister of the Environment, and Minister of Education. And today I have the honor of talking to Elizabeth Witmer about Dutch heritage in Ontario and why she introduced that bill 12 years ago now. Welcome to Dutch, the podcast, Elizabeth. I am so glad that you're able to join us for our conversation, and I'm really looking forward to it.
And I'm looking forward to it as well.
Okay. So I introduced you just now, but just to be clear, you were a member of the provincial parliament in Ontario for 22 years. You served as minister in two cabinets, including as deputy premier to Premier Ernie Eves in the early 2000s, and then continued on as deputy leader of the opposition. So it sounds like you're very much at home in Ontario, but nevertheless, you were born in the Netherlands, if I'm right.
Yes, I did have the good fortune of having been born in the Netherlands. I was born in a small village, Ketel, which is very close to Schiedam, which of course is very close to Rotterdam.
Yeah, I've never heard of Ketel, actually. So that's just outside Schiedam?
Yes, it is. I think it's now probably been annexed.
Okay. So if I may, how old were you when you came to Canada?
I was 4 years old when my mother and father decided to come in 1951. We were part of the group of, I guess, people that really, I think, had been attracted by the Canadians who had liberated the Netherlands. And we were looking, as others were, for a better life. They for themselves, but I think most importantly, they were looking for a better life for my brother and myself, and they decided to join the hundreds and thousands of other people who came after World War II.
Absolutely, yes. And so did you come straight to Ontario? Is that where your family settled?
No, and that, I will say, was very stressful for my mother. We crossed, of course, the Atlantic on the Volendam. And then my father had a sister who lived in Alberta. She lived in Picture Butte, which is near Lethbridge. And so we were to travel across by train to Alberta. And before they got off the boat, the stewards were kind enough to say to my mother, you know what, that's a long trip across Canada. It's going to be very cold because, of course, it was March. And so, take some of these blankets for your children, which my mom did. And they boarded the train, obviously, and went to Alberta. And when they got to Alberta, it was midnight. And regrettably, Picture Butte is a very small town, and my uncle did not come. He got the dates mixed up, so they landed there at the station, and there was nobody to greet them. Fortunately, there was somebody there who took pity on this family
Oh,
and took us to their home. And then we joined my aunt and uncle, but they lived outside of town, very, very far. And it wasn't much of a home. And I can remember I had to sleep on a car seat that my father found, a deserted car, and my brother slept in a drawer. And I will say this was tough for my mom, who was used to, the Netherlands, lots of people.
the creature comforts
Yeah,
in the
and
Netherlands.
she had 12 brothers and sisters. And so, anyway, they decided they would go to Ontario. They connected with a pastor at a church, and we ended up in Exeter. And I will say they had a wonderful life. They were very happy. They were, proud folks who'd come from the Netherlands, but they were certainly proud Canadians. They love this country with all their hearts.
That's wonderful, yeah, and you see that with a lot of the Dutch immigrants who
Yes.
came in that period.
That's right.
And it's not easy. I don't know if your brother was older or younger than you,
Younger
but
than I. Yeah, he was younger.
yeah, so make a move with a toddler and an infant,
Yeah.
basically, like that. That's quite amazing. Now, so you were only 4 years old, so you'll have few memories of that early time in the Netherlands. But were you conscious, aware of your Dutch heritage as you went to school here in Ontario, in Canada? How did that affect your youth in any way?
I was aware of it. I guess the memories that I have, the only memories were what my mom and dad told me. And so, for example, they told me that I had gone to school when I was, 3 years old. And I used to go to my grandmother's for lunch. But when I went to school, yes, at first I was very hesitant because you kind of want to fit in, Tom.
As a kid,
As a
yeah,
kid,
for sure.
you want to fit in. And then I will say my mom and dad, they were fantastic. And Exeter, small community, 3,000 people, they became involved in the community. They worked very hard. My mother actually, in order to make ends meet, started to clean other people's homes. And my father was in construction first, and then he went to the dairy, and then he became a custodian. That was what he did throughout his life. But they were well respected throughout the community. My dad was a coach for baseball, for hockey. Mother was involved in helping other people. So I gradually became, I would say to you, more proud of the fact of my Dutch heritage. Yeah. Yeah.
So that gradually grew. It's interesting. I see that with my own kids. My oldest was born in the Netherlands. The youngest three were all born in Canada,
Right.
and they're proud Canadians.
Right.
But it almost took until they were in their mid-teens until they started realizing, that they were hyphenated Canadians in a
Exactly.
way.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's interesting. Now, of course, you went into politics, but you had a career before you went into politics. I
Yes,
presume.
I did have a career. I decided I wanted to be a teacher, and I was the oldest child. My brother's a year and a half younger than me, and my parents, even though I started work when I was age 12, I got a job in the local, kind of Walmart store. It was Chainway. And I was trying to earn money to go to university, but my parents said, you know what, we can't help you for more than 1 year. We're going to help your brother. And that was the immigrant mentality. I'd have a husband who could provide for me, but
Yeah, and in that
yeah,
day and age, of course, yeah.
so that was fine. I started obediently at Teachers College in London. After a month, I thought, no, I don't want to teach elementary school. I want to teach secondary school, and I'm going to walk across the street. This was around Thanksgiving. I'm going to go to Western, and I'm going to register. I don't know why they accepted me, but they did. And it was interesting.
Good choice on their part.
Yeah, and so I called my mom and dad, told them what I'd done. They said, "Well, who's going to pay for this?" And I said, "I'm going to continue to work." There were no, student loans, and I said, "I'm going to work as hard as I can." And lo and behold, my mother, actually, one of her cleaning jobs was in the home of a doctor and his wife, and all she said was I'd gone to university. Of course, they recognized finances would be kind of difficult. Anyway, this lady called me, this Mrs. Fletcher, wonderful lady, and she said, "Dr. Fletcher and I will pay for your education." And she said, "No interest. When you're done, you can repay us." And I will say, if ever there was a boost to my self-confidence, that was it.
I can imagine.
It was.
That's amazing.
I think it has influenced me throughout my entire life to think somebody took that risk. But you see, it's based on, and I often remind people, your track record comes back all the time. So they had, as I say, it was a small town. They knew who I was. They knew who our family was. And I will say within a year, my debt had been discharged.
Wow, yeah. That is unbelievable. Yeah, so that's amazing that you managed to pay back that quickly as well. Fantastic. So at some point you entered politics. You were elected to the provincial parliament of Ontario, and you, of course, in 22 years plus in politics, you've got a lot of achievements to be proud of. I'm thinking workplace safety is one of the things, one of the acts you're known for. But in the Dutch community, you're known for a specific act that you introduced in 2011, and it's called an Act to Proclaim May as Dutch Heritage Month.
That's right.
Why did you do that?
Well, first of all, I should tell you, there was a person who was very instrumental in my becoming more and more proud of my Dutch heritage. And that was Jack in Burlington.
Jack van der Laan.
Yes, Jack van der Laan.
Yes.
And he would communicate with me and tell me, share things with me. And, over time, I thought, you know what? We have so much to be proud of. We have made.
I'm just going to interrupt you briefly for our listeners to mention who Jack van der Laan is.
Sure.
So Jack owned a men's clothing store in Burlington, Ontario for many years called Filman's Menswear, but he was very active in the Dutch Canadian Association, in the Dutch community, and he instituted the Dutch Canadian Friendship Day in Burlington, Ontario, was instrumental in twinning Burlington with the city of Apeldoorn in the Netherlands, and remained active in the Dutch community, throughout his professional career. He's retired now, still sends me emails a couple of times a week with interesting bits about the Netherlands. So that's the Jack van der Laan we're talking about. Shout out to Jack. I'm sure he'll hear it. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up, Elizabeth.
No, you know what? He I think has played a large role in ensuring that we continue to be proud of not just our heritage, but also the relationship that we have with the Canadian public and what have you. So anyway, that was fine. And, then I started thinking, I'd sit in the legislature and we'd have these other days, that we would celebrate. And I thought, here we have all these people who have come from the Netherlands since the 1800s. In fact, we have over 500,000 in Ontario. We have over, 1 million in Canada. In fact, at one point, that was, 3% of the population. So, and they've all come here, and we've made contributions, whether it's, art or whether it's business, whether it's economy, the environment, culture, so many contributions. And the relationship between the two countries is so strong, based primarily on the fact that during World War II, the Canadian soldiers were instrumental in the liberation of the Netherlands. And of course, they continue to celebrate that on May the 5th. And of course,
absolutely, and all the sacrifices, the many young men who were killed in the Netherlands or on the way to the Netherlands. or otherwise hurt and injured physically and mentally during the war.
That's right. So I thought, we actually have a stronger relationship than many other countries, and we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate our heritage and, what we've been able to achieve since then. So that was really when I started thinking about what it was that we should be doing. And I thought, I'm going to introduce this bill. And I thought, well, some countries just celebrate for a day or a week, but we have so much that happens in May. We have the liberation, but we also, have the celebration of the Tulip Festival in Ottawa. And of course, the reason for that is because Queen Juliana was given safe refuge in Ottawa during World War II. Her daughter, Princess Margriet, was born here, and as a result, every year they continue to send lots of tulips to Ottawa. So that was just another reason, and I thought, I'm going to make it a whole month that we would celebrate our Dutch heritage.
That is great. So the whole month of May is Dutch Heritage Month in Ontario. That's also the month the Tulip Festival takes place in Ottawa. Hundreds of thousands, literally, of tulips on Parliament Hill and elsewhere in the city, several parks. Just a wonder to see. And Queen Juliana sent those over, the first ones at least, started this.
Well, that's right. And of course, as you well know, I sit on this global health committee between McMaster University and Maastricht, and Princess Marguerite is the honorary chair of that board. Yeah. And so she repeatedly, often will come to Canada and go to Ottawa and, celebrate that month, and also go to Brantford or Brampton and Burlington and other places. So, the linkage continues to be there between her and
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen her several times when she was visiting here at Holland Christian Homes, as you mentioned, in Brampton. I was also in the Netherlands when she opened a new pavilion in the Open Air Museum in Arnhem, and the pavilion was dedicated to that immigration wave that you talked about, that you were part of, coming to Canada. It's called Wij gaan naar Canada. We are going to Canada, and there's a whole dedicated pavilion, and Princess Margriet was on hand to open it a few years back when it first opened. Yeah, she is a very good friend of Canada and Ontario.
She definitely is, and I really appreciate the relationship that I've had been privileged to develop with her, and wish I could have attended that, but that was not possible. But wij gaan naar Canada. And here we are. Yeah. We are here.
Have you? I mean, the pandemic has interfered, but have you had a chance to visit there yet?
Do you know what we are going to? In fact, part of the conversation this morning is our last meeting was in Hamilton, which was last year. We'd had a pause for those 2 years of the pandemic, and now this fall we're going to go to Maastricht. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, if you get a chance, I would advise a visit to the Open Air Museum and in particular to that pavilion. But it's a full day. It's a wonderful museum.
Oh, well, thank you for making me aware of that. I will certainly endeavor to try to do that.
Okay. What time of year is the meeting?
We're probably going to meet after Thanksgiving.
Okay, so a little late because it's an open air museum, but so you want to have decent weather. But anyway, if you get the chance, I would say go visit it. Absolutely, okay. It really touches on also specifically on the relationship with Burlington, because it was sponsored by a Burlington resident.
Right.
You mentioned you're a member of the board for McMaster Maastricht Health.
Yes, Global
Can you
Health.
talk a little bit about that? Sure. And then maybe also, are there any other positions you hold, boards or whatever, that are related specifically to the Dutch heritage aspect of your work?
Right. Well, I was asked to become the first chair of this Global Health program, between those two universities. For number one, I had been born in the Netherlands, and so there was the connection. And secondly, because I had been Minister of Health, and so I had some knowledge, obviously, of the health system here in the province of Ontario. And so I will say it's been a huge success. The objective was to train health professionals, global health professionals, to meet the needs of global health, which, as you know, continue to expand each and every day. And we have now partnered with, there are 7 people in the consortium. There were just the 2 universities. Then we added India. And since then, we have added other universities as well. And I've been very impressed with the graduates of the program because they have taken certainly significant positions in health organizations throughout the entire world. And they have placements during the program. And so they have, they'll go to Sudan, Kenya, Colombia, they'll go to Japan, Thailand. There's tremendous opportunity. Norway, there's been a keen interest in Northern health as well. But yes, it's been very rewarding to see these students who graduate and able to serve really mankind.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay.
There aren't any other specific organizations that I can think of with that type of connection. I sometimes get,
but you're often invited to speak
yes.
and MC events of a Dutch Canadian nature.
Oh yes, yes. I've gotten a slew of them now coming in, particularly, and that's the one thing. Unfortunately, during COVID, a lot of things did not happen, so that's too bad. But now, of course, we're going to have the flag raising at the Ontario Parliament buildings.
May 10th, I believe.
And that's always hosted by the Consul General. And of course, Ted Arnott, the speaker, is our host. And there's usually a reception, and anybody watching this can attend. You simply go to the grounds of Queen's Park, and you can participate in the ceremony, and you can indulge afterwards. There's usually a reception, and that's really good. The other one that I really have looked forward to ever since, Jack got me excited about my heritage is, of course, Burlington and their flag raising day. I mean, they've done more than almost any community in Canada as far as promoting and strengthening the ties between our two countries. Yeah.
Yeah, I often talk about that, and I live in Oakville, so that actually very close to Burloak, almost in Burlington.
That's right.
And you've got a Dutch store, you've got a very big Dutch retirement home, we've got a branch of the Dutch credit union, Duca, and then there's that big sign when you drive into town, twinned with Apeldoorn in the Netherlands.
Yeah, no, they've had exchanges, as you know. You've got the younger students, the high school students, others, and their focus has always been on peace and freedom, and I mean, it's a wonderful relationship that community has fostered.
And Apeldoorn is lucky as well because Burlington has this amazing teen show band.
Yes, they do.
That is world class, and they get to perform at these events.
That's right. So and that's always special. And then Holland Christian Homes, they always have a flag raising as well. So that'll be coming up. And Princess Marguerite was actually there. When they opened another wing and are doing, more building there. Now, KLM used to do something before they were taken over by all the other airlines, and we would go out to Pearson and we would have a ceremony out there. It was great because they always gave away a free flight to Amsterdam, so people were pretty keen to participate in that one.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. Now, if you look at the future, I mean, the original immigrants are getting on clearly, obviously, even the ones that came as kids. I interviewed a few people who came across as kids on the very first post-war immigrant ship in 1947. They lived in a retirement home in Barrie. How do you see the future of the relationship between Ontario, specifically Canada, maybe more generally, and the Netherlands developing? How can we sustain those tremendously good ties that we have as two nations, as two
For
peoples?
sure. Well, I know part of the job of the ambassadors, and also the consul generals, is to do all they can to strengthen the ties. And obviously, a lot of that is business, economic, cultural, ties. And I do believe that will happen. We have communities like Burlington and Ottawa who have the Tulip Festival, for example. And, Toronto does have some exchanges as well. I think we have those to build on. I think we have a strong enough foundation. And I actually think this legislation proclaiming, May as Dutch Heritage Month helps to build that foundation. And, despite the fact that perhaps our children um, will not, understand their heritage, I still think there are opportunities. I would say to you, my two children, obviously born in Canada, and I'm married to a Canadian, they love their Dutch heritage. They are very proud of it, and of course, when it comes time for soccer, um, you know,
Of course,
anybody
yeah.
who has a Dutch heritage, they're there,
Yeah. Oh,
supporting
yeah.
their teams. It's just going to be a different relationship, but I still think it. I think based on what has happened in the past, based on the feelings that Canadians have and will always have, as far as their role in the liberation of the Netherlands and vice versa, the Dutch and relationship to the Canadians. I think there's, of course, there's the legions in Canada. Again, they play a role and celebrate the role that they played in the liberation. So I think it will be maintained. And of course, there's so many economic ventures between the two countries, and I think I read somewhere that the Netherlands, the third highest amount of money that they invest in any country after UK and US is Canada.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they're
That's
the
significant. Yeah.
relationships really do go beyond. What you and I might have been talking about, just now. But you mentioned the Dutch store. One of my saddest days was the Dutch store here in Kitchener Waterloo closed. So now I either have to
That,
travel to Guelph or sometimes I'll stop. Is it Stony Creek?
yeah, Stony Creek has one. Well, Grimsby,
Grimsby. That's
actually.
it.
But
It's
yeah,
Grimsby that I get off.
yeah.
But yeah, because I still do like, well, bit of bowls and all those other good things.
Yeah, I was in Peterborough on Friday visiting the local Dutch store there, Maggie's
Oh,
Meat
yes.
Market. But the croquette
Oh, I
factory
love
that
those.
makes all those bitterballs
Yeah.
is there as well. So I went down, I visited Cruz Croquettes, and he even showed me how they're made. So sometimes they say you shouldn't do that, but it was fine. It looked
Yeah.
great. It looked wonderful.
Yeah. No, I know. I do love those. And I sometimes stop in Barrie on my way to the cottage because there's still a store there.
Continental and Barry, also good, yeah, good friend of
Yeah.
ours, Jeff, Jeff up
Right.
there, Jeff and Nikirk. Okay, well, you mentioned Waterloo. Maybe we can briefly wrap up by Waterloo. Kitchener Waterloo is known more as a German area, I think, but maybe that's just the image it has. But was there a significant Dutch community there as
Well,
well?
yes, it's known as, well, Mennonites and Germans, obviously. And, but yes, there were two Dutch churches here. And actually, one of them, the Christian Reformed, is still active, but the other one I don't believe is anymore, which again shows you that there were sufficient people. And
Yeah.
from time to time, there is a group, and I've been involved with them. They plant tulips and they do celebrate some of the significant milestones that occurred during World War II. And so there is a small group that tries to continue to highlight that relationship between Canada and the Netherlands. But overall, the footprint it's spread out. I remember when I was young, my mom and dad used to go to the Dutch Club in London on Saturday
Yeah,
nights.
well-known Dutch club. Yeah,
And so, I mean, a lot of that helped to bring people together. But there's nothing.
yeah. Well, we interviewed a professor from Fanshawe a few weeks ago for the
Right.
podcast. He's from London, and he met his wife at the Dutch
Did he?
club in London. So you know, and he was born
Yeah.
here and grew up here, but they still went with their parents, and that's where they met each
Yeah.
other.
Well, my husband loved to go to the Dutch Club with my mom and dad, and they had another couple that they went with, and we had a wonderful time. So,
Well, that's maybe because of the
right.
bitter
You're right.
Anyway, maybe to wrap up, there's 500,000 people of Dutch descent, give or take, in Ontario, 1 million in Canada as a whole. Do you see specific Dutch influences in the province where you say, yes, we can point at that, and that is something that we as Dutch Ontarians, Dutch Canadians, were responsible for?
Well, I think, one of the like we are known for hard work, and I think there's still areas of the province too where we've got an agricultural footprint because a lot of the people came to this community. Sure. And so, you take a look at some of the names down the Niagara Peninsula, over towards Chatham, up north of, Toronto and what have you. Definitely, you can see the impact of the immigrants who have farmed that land and, helped to produce.
I don't think I've ever seen a truck for a nursery or a company that does not have a Dutch last name.
Exactly. And so, no, we are highly respected. When I was taking a look at some of my notes from the day I introduced this legislation, everybody referred to, the hard work, all that we've done. So, and that will always be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, it was a pleasure talking to you, an honor talking to you. Thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for joining us on Dudge the podcast. And I hope I'll see you at one of the flag raisings. I'm sure I'm going to be attending at least the one in Queen's Park and hopefully the one in Burlington as well. So look forward to catching up there again.
Well,
Thanks
thank
again.
you very much, Tom. And thank you so much because it is people like you and, Tio and of course, Martin and his Dutch Touch originally. I mean, that all helps to keep the Dutch spirit alive. Thank you.
We do what we can. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow, that's a very proud Canadian Dutch perspective from Elizabeth Witmer. Very cool interview. Thanks, Tom. That was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking to Elizabeth. That was wonderful.
She seems to have amazing energy still for the Dutch community. You've pointed out before that she's very visible through many of these events, and her energy is amazing.
Yeah, wherever you go, if there's a Dutch event, whether it's honoring veterans, whether it's looking back on the immigration movement, whether it's a fundraiser, Elizabeth will always be there, be happy to speak, will be happy to MC an event. And she's also a great supporter of Dutch the Magazine and Dutch the Media, for which we're very grateful. It was wonderful that she agreed to join us on the show.
Yeah, it does. It takes on a very interesting perspective about how proud we are as Canadians to have such a vibrant relationship still with the Netherlands. And she points out why beautifully.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, earlier I mentioned the book that you had written, Hidden in Plain Sight. There's make the connection, if you don't mind, from this celebration of Dutch culture in Canada and the book, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Mike. Absolutely. Well, this is really what the book is about. Not just Canada and the US, but the impact that the Netherlands and the Dutch have had on Canada and the US. So in the book, I explore settling Dutch settlers, communities that came from Dutch settlements, but also individual accomplishments and achievements. We highlight the lives of a number of Dutch Canadians and Dutch Americans who've had an impact on society in all kinds of ways. So, this conversation with Elizabeth underlines really what the book is to a large extent about. It's about the Dutch presence here in North America, both Canada and the US, and over the ages, right from the start, but also with quite a bit of emphasis on that 1950s immigration wave that we talked about with Elizabeth.
A really amazing book, the collection of essays all in one place, hidden in plain sight. You'll find it at DutchTheMedia.com, along with everything else Dutch that you really need to connect with to Crank. And you get Dutch the Magazine there. Of course, all of these wonderful publications are available through that portal as well. Tom, thanks. I really appreciate this.
Thanks, Mike, and I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a friend. Bye.
Okay. Bye.